So welcome to tonight's webinar, everyone, on the ins and outs of starting a successful MiSCA team. We're utilizing GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar tonight, and I want to give a shout out to iDashboards for helping us with that technology. This is much more of a professional way of running these meetings, and it makes it so that we can talk to a lot more people at one time than we normally would be able to by doing, in-person meetings. So we really appreciate their support. My name is Sean Warren, and I am the president of the MiSCA board, and I also serve as the day-to-day league director for Michigan Scholastic Cycling. And I've been doing that since about 2012 when I went to the state championship that year, and pretty much ever since then I've been active either on the board or at the races, and I've pretty much done everything from marketing to working the races and registration and timing, to actually being the USAC race director, sponsor development, and now being the league director as we do this year-long programming that we've rolled out this year. Additionally, I'm in two other nonprofit boards, the Motor City Mountain Biking Association and also my neighborhood homeowners association. So I'm also joined by Emily Kowalski. Emily started mountain biking back in 2012. And got her kids riding in 2013, so right then after. And they've been involved with MiSCA ever since. And so she's definitely seen some changes with the organization in that time frame, I'm sure. As I have been involved with most of them, a lot has changed. Emily was pivotal in starting the Huron Valley team in the winter of 2016 and 17. And her organizational and communication skills really set her apart. And I think that definitely contributed to the success of their team last year. And I don't mean success like, they had 5 state champions on their team. I mean success in that they had more than 40 kids showing up to their practice rides and eventually to their races. And that's what we're all about. We're about getting kids on bikes, and eventually they might gain that courage and that competitive spirit to really get out there and mix it in with the other kids. And they did have, I'm pretty sure they did get some state champions too. But I wanted to invite her to speak to everyone today so that we could learn from their example of how they could take, a team from literally 0 to 60 in 1 year. And Emily was just talking to me about the success that she's already seeing this year with her pre-registration signups for the team. And they're looking at some extreme growth. And so I'm really excited to see that. And I really hope that we can all learn from their example and try to implement some of what they do here on Valley. So these are the basics that we're going to touch on tonight. I've selected some specific topics that are relevant to pretty much everyone on the call. So whether or not you're a new team or you're an existing team, I think that you're going to learn something from this session, especially because there are some changes this year from last year. So you might just learn something from that. But basically, we're just going to go about what MiSCA is about, how we're organized, how our teams work. Emily is going to do her presentation on Huron Valley. And then I'll give you guys some more tips and guidance on starting a team. That's kind of what we've been doing in the last few years, is providing kind of some bullet points of what to follow or what rules to kind of implement on your teams to be successful. We'll cover some upcoming events, and then of course we'll cover Q&A at the end. Again, if you do have questions, please list them in the questions box of GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar, and we'll make sure that we touch on those by the end of the session. So MiSCA works to establish and maintain safe, quality scholastic cycling programs. It's a pretty broad mission statement, and so we do have some clarifying bullets below. And basically what we're about is providing support to schools and organizations wishing to establish scholastic cycling clubs and teams, developing and maintaining an interscholastic competition series, and promoting the value of cycling to our youth as a mode of transportation and in general, mountain biking as a lifelong sport. And we're generally really good at those last 2 bullet points, and this year we're trying to amp it up to meet that first bullet point of our mission and really give some support to our coaches and our teams. And so some people might see that as extra regulation or rules, but really what it is it's a structure, a foundation that we really wish we had a long time ago to allow us to grow and expand while still providing quality and safe programming. That's really a key, right? So at our core, we need to provide quality and safe Scholastic cycling programs, not just, races that anybody shows up and does whatever they want throughout the year. We need to make sure that the kids are in a safe environment throughout that time. So this is how the league is organized today, and it's pretty simple to understand because it's pretty much how most organizations are organized that have some kind of affiliation or any other team that your children or somebody you know might be involved in, or what you were involved in when you were in school. But basically, MiSCA is kind of like what we would call kind of like the governing body for Scholastic cycling on the mountain biking side in Michigan. MiSCA is going this year to have official MiSCA teams, and MiSCA teams that are registered with us are then covered under our insurance. And teams then have coaches who are being certified, and that does include adult volunteers. So if you have adult volunteers who are riding bikes on your team, they are considered coaches, and they should go through the same registration process as what our coach registration is. It's basically a background check and watching a webinar, not a big deal. But basically what it means is that, anybody who's going to be out in the woods with the kids on your team is going to be somebody who is approved to do so. And then we're going to have the student athletes. And this year again, we're going to have the student athletes register as part of MiSCA, so that it's kind of like MiSCA is a club at the top level, and then everybody's part of MiSCA from then on. And that's basically, if you imagine it like, an umbrella, that's how our insurance is covered. Anybody who's a member of the organization is covered, and we have to make sure that everybody registers as part of the organization, so that way we can ensure that we're meeting our requirements with our insurers, and also that, just in general, that everyone's safe out there and covered if something were to happen. So it's actually really easy to become a MiSCA team. What you need to do is register. So registration is open today at miscabike.org. If you're not currently a team registered with MiSCA, you go there, you sign up, and then there's a annual team registration. And only one person from your team needs to sign up to have an official team. There is a registration fee associated with that, and again, that basically goes back to pay for insurance. Only official MiSCA teams will be covered under our insurance, and also for team awards. So in previous years, pretty much anybody who had 4 riders could show up and be a team with MiSCA, and this year you have to be a registered team in order to be an official team. And that's the only way that your team name will ever be announced at a MiSCA race, or that we will recognize you as a member of a team, is if you are an official MiSCA team. Now, in order to be an official MiSCA team, there are some things that you also have to do in addition to that. So, for example, the coaches on your team, you'd have to have at least one coach to have a team, and the coach would have to be registered with MiSCA as well. And any team practices, you'd have to have a level 2 coach involved. I'm not going to cover all the coaching requirements tonight because that's not what we're talking about, but go to miscabike.org/coach, and you can see all the details there on how to become a coach and what the requirements are. But there's also a lot of great resources on the website, again, miscabike.org/resources for sample team budgets and other tips and tricks to get started, waivers and things like that. We have 2 different types of teams in MiSCA. There's school-based teams and there's scholastic teams. And composite teams. Let me repeat that. There's school-based teams and composite teams. So a school-based team is basically a collection of students from the same school or school district, if there's only one high school at the school, where they're collectively riding for the same team. Okay? Now that could be anybody who is eligible to compete in that school's JV or varsity sport would also be eligible to compete on that MiSCA team. So we understand that there might be charter schools or homeschooled kids that are within your school district, and they are allowed to join your MiSCA team if they would normally be allowed to join your other sports at your school. And then we have composite teams. Now, composite teams are made up of kids from all different types of schools, and this does mention homeschooled kids as well. What that means is that if you live in a school district that has a team, you don't have to join that school's team necessarily. You can join a team from any organization that has one in the area that you would like to join. And what the composite team is kind of meant to do is to spark that the energy in an area. So much like what the Huron Valley team is doing, they're a composite team. They are primarily based around the Huron Valley School District, and they're pulling from, I think it's 3 different high schools to build their team. And not just high schools, middle schools, and elementary schools as well, or anybody in the area who just wants to ride with them. But in the end, what that means is that you're pulling from all these different areas, and the goal is to get a team at each school eventually, but you might not be able to do that on the first year, and that's okay. And so that's where these composite teams come in. Usually it's a bike shop or another youth organization or just a parent that wants to start a team in the area and there is no team available to them. So currently we have about 20 teams around the state. Not all of them are official MiSCA teams as of today, but I'm hoping that number will climb. And there's probably more people on the call that are not listed on this map, but we hope to hear from them soon as well. So feel free to reach out to me if you're thinking of starting a team or if you've already started working on it. Let us know so that we can put your information out there. Really the first step is to create a Facebook group so that way you have somewhere official that we can send people to. An email address is also good, obviously, but a Facebook group is a great way that you can start communicating with people and getting people involved before you get too much official going on. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Emily Kowalski. Again, Emily is the team manager and coach of the Huron Valley United, and their team started officially last year as an official MiSCA team. And Emily, if you're talking, you might be on mute. I don't hear you yet.
Oh, I'm here. Thanks, Sean, for having me.
Thanks, Emily.
All right. So as Sean said, we started out our club and our team last year. It all started out because my husband Darren and I, we met another couple, Dan and his wife Andrea, at our kids' basketball games. They played on the same team together, and we knew their family biked, they knew we biked, and so we started getting to know them and said, hey, it would be really cool. Kids all learn to bike, but nobody knows any other kids to bike, so then let's join and make a club. So we decided to approach our Huron Valley Athletic Department. They then directed us to the Huron Valley Rec and Fitness Department because that is where new sports are introduced. They want to see if there's enough interest before obviously becoming a school sport. So we then met with the Huron Valley director, and she determined that, yes, we had enough families interested and enough parent involvement to justify adding a course for a mountain bike club. With that, they told us that they would give us a 3 to 5 year trial period before possibly becoming a letter sport. So as Sean said, we are a composite team now, but our hope is that in the future we can become a school sport. The Huron Valley Rec provided background checks for us, concussion training, and also we were under their umbrella for liability insurance. I know it'll be different this year now that MiSCA has insurance for us as well. They also were instrumental in getting the word out. We made flyers, and they were great with passing them out, emailing them, handing them out to the elementary schools throughout our school district. We also, as Sean said, we made a Facebook page. That was one of the first things we did. And then word of mouth was huge. I think, when one family would show up, they would go tell another family, and that is how a lot of our club got started. So the club rides, we were really consistent for our club rides. We chose to have our rides every Thursday at the same location. So we did 6 o'clock every Thursday night at the Milford YMCA from the first week after spring break through the end of September. I think the consistency, the same day, time, and location was super easy for families to attend when they were able to, because if they went on vacation in the summer or had another sports or other activities, they didn't have to go check a schedule. They just knew that every Thursday we would be there. We also included all ages, so kindergarten through 12th grade were welcome to join our club, and parents, but it wasn't necessary for parents to attend, and all abilities as well. Including all abilities made it more approachable for maybe a middle school or high schooler with less experience and maybe haven't been on a trail before. You know, we were willing to teach them, and it was okay if they didn't have experience. So with that, you have to be willing to teach people all year. We had kids come in the spring, and all the way through September, we had new kids joining where it was their first time on the trail. So we had volunteers that were willing to work with first-timers the entire season, but again, I think that was just instrumental in just being welcoming and having kids want to come and learn how to ride their bike. So for our club rides, we did 3 to 4 different group rides, depending on their abilities and who showed up for the night. It also, you know, had varied ride lengths as well. We always had a leader and a sweeper for our different groups, and then many times there was other parents who were riding as well, and they would just kind of sneak in mid-pack somewhere. We really found that kids do a lot better riding with other adults and not their own parents. I can say for our kids especially, we have 4, and there were many Thursdays on our way that, you know, 2 of our kids would be whining, we don't want to go, we don't want to go. But yet when they get out with other students and other adults, they're night and day. I mean, they perform so much better, and then on our way home, they'd be thanking us for taking them for the ride that night. The biggest enabler, I think, for us was that we decided there was no cost to join the club. So we felt that with zero risk to try, there would be no pressure to race at all, and how do you know if you're going to like mountain biking if you have to pay this big fee up front? So we really wanted it to be free to join so that kids can get a taste of mountain biking. We did have a parent design T-shirts for us, one of our club parents, and we charged $20 for the shirts, and that was a great way to earn funds for our club. We also used email, a Facebook page, and we also used an app called the Team app last year for communication. However, we are going away with the Team app this year and just going to use the Sports Illustrated Play app through MiSCA. We did weekly communication emails to keep things active and just to keep people engaged and excited to be a part of the club. And we also used all 3 forms of communication if we ended up having to do weather cancellations last minute.
And I just wanted to mention too, when it comes to the zero risk to try and no pressure to race, that is something that MiSCA is passionate about as well. We understand that we are putting a registration fee on each child because they're part of the league for the entire year, even if they don't race. And what I want to just make sure that everyone is aware of is that you don't necessarily, they don't have to register for MiSCA in order to participate in your practice rides, okay? But eventually they should. That's the idea. So if they're coming to every one, then they should probably join MiSCA. The idea is that they have to have a waiver signed, and that would be what you would want to have filled out. And then direct them to the website to hopefully sign up if they enjoyed the practice or if they want to keep going with it. So again, there is no zero risk or fee to try it if they want to. But after the first few practices, that's when you would want to direct them to the website to make sure that they're becoming a member. So that way they're covering the cost of running the organization. But also, you know, if they have any issues where maybe they can't afford that, we do have scholarships available. And, you know, our goal is to approve 100% of the scholarships applications that come in. So if there is, you know, any reason why somebody would not be able to participate, we hope that we can solve that challenge if it's a financial one, for sure.
Awesome. So after our club got started, we felt like, all right, it's time to introduce a team. So we started announcing that we were going to have a team kickoff meeting where parents and students could come and get information about how we were going to structure the team. So parents and kids attended. We stressed that we weren't going to require practice attendance due to other sports. We understand that in the fall there's football, there's, I don't know what else, hockey, cross country is a big one. And as much as we want and encourage regular attendance, we know that just starting out, we couldn't really require that if we wanted to get people interested in biking. As Sean said, we also agreed with that and said that we weren't that you could be a part of the team and not race. So we did have students who wanted to maybe join the team, but they have never been to a MiSCA race, so they weren't quite sure. They just wanted to check it out. And I would say at the beginning, because our kickoff meeting was in May, we had probably 50% of our club kids say, nope, not interested in racing. And the ones that did say they were interested, oh, maybe we'll do 1 or 2 races at the beginning. And in the end, we had 41 kids race last season, our first year, and most ended up racing all 4 or 5 races. Let's see. So we designed jerseys for our team. We began the design in April, and we went around to local businesses for some sponsors, and we decided to have different sponsorship levels. Like any organization, we had a title, gold, silver, and bronze sponsor. And depending on your sponsorship level is where your logo was placed on our jersey and on our shorts. And with that money, we used it to cover our food costs on race days. We're saving up for a tent, hopefully to purchase this year. And also if we had any kids who needed financial assistance and just for future costs. We also had the same parent who designed our club tees. He also designed our jerseys. And I called around to different companies, and we found that Belay out of California, they were the cheapest and gave us the best student pricing for teams. So they sent us jerseys on that same meeting day. And so we had like a jersey try-on day, we called it, so that the kids could at least try on the jersey to have some clue on what size they would need to order. Once those jerseys arrived, it was pretty awesome because more kids were like, we want to race. It was all about the jersey for some of those younger kids. So we ended up having to place another jersey order, even though they weren't going to receive it until like the last 2 races of the season. I would definitely say that it's a long lead time for jerseys. So getting ahead of this is like a big key. I would say it's around a 6-week turnaround by the design and everything and production. So getting ahead of this is important. So for our team rides, we started doing our team rides in August of last year. Obviously, it will be earlier this year, I believe in May. We did Tuesday and Sunday rides. So our Tuesday rides, we didn't have a whole lot of participation because of sports conflicting, but we kept consistent and stayed with it every week. Some weeks we only had 6 kids showed up and only 4 of them were ours, but we stayed consistent. Our Sunday rides were huge turnouts, and those rides were really fun because we got to go to other local trails and just met, at Brighton or Island Lake or Novi. And then on the weekends that we had a race, we always pre-rode the race trail that Saturday before. And then we still obviously did our club rides every Thursday night. For race day, we made sure that the kids knew the course. So if there were kids that maybe couldn't come that Saturday to pre-ride, we encouraged them to show up earlier on the Sunday morning of race so that they could go and take a peek at the course, especially the finish area, as that's how we set up the day of. So just encourage, making sure they know what course they're riding. Parent support was awesome for our team. One thing that I learned was that I was trying to do it all, and I really learned that parents do want to help. You just have to be willing to ask. I think I just thought, nobody's going to I don't want to put anybody out, but in the end, people were like, what can we do? So I would say that food prep is huge. Have parents take charge of that. People can come early and help set up the tents and help set up the bike racks. We had parents wanting to make bike racks for us. People helped with tear down and, of course, photography. If people like to take photos, that was awesome, too. At the end of the season, we did a season-end pool party and a pizza party at the Milford High School, which was a big hit. And then after that, I believe it was in November, we did a giving back day through the Milford Trail, since that's the trail that we rode from spring until fall. And we did maintenance on it. We set it up through the MCMDA and had the kids and the parents, everybody. We had many families show up for that. That just helps to promote MiSCA, it helps promote kids on the trails with other adults riding all the local trails, and also just the tolerance for MiSCA races. By us doing that, it was really cool because it led to the Milford Bike Fest that I'll talk about in a few minutes. Some possible reasons for our success. At the beginning, as I said earlier, is that we had no fee and no risk to join the club. We were consistent with our rides throughout the spring, summer, and fall. There wasn't a Thursday that we missed unless it was weather conditions. We also understand that mountain biking isn't a mainstream sport quite yet, as much as I would like it to be. So that means that we had to be flexible with ride attendance. We had some kids that were in cross country and football, and we just had to be flexible with that. We knew they would come when they could, and it worked out. We also allowed all ages and abilities. I think what's really important is to get kids on bikes younger so that they're not so intimidated when they're older to start up biking. I didn't start till I was an adult, and it is a lot more intimidating than as a child. We had many parents and children afraid of our Milford Trail. We understand that it's a little bit harder of a trail to be our local trail. However, I think you can, anywhere you live, find a section of a trail to make it more beginner friendly and just build off of that. And by the end of the summer, most kids mastered that trail. You know, they may jump off their bike going up or down a hill, but they don't care, and it's okay, and that's the cool part, is they're confident in that. We also just promoted communication. We did weekly communication emails. After every race, we tried to send out an email to the team and also to our sponsors and just kind of give a recap of the race. And I think that just kept everybody engaged. Kids are much more capable of what than we think they are. An example of this is last summer we did a Sunday ride at Pontiac, and to be honest, I wasn't fully excited about it. I thought it was going to be too much for the kids, but we did it anyway, and we had it set up that we were going to have two different groups, a more beginner group and then an intermediate to advanced group, and we probably had, I don't know, 20 to 30 kids show up, and you know, these intermediate kids just did the whole trail like it was no big deal, and we had a few elementary kids after their small section was done say, can we do more? And they ended up doing the entire trail. And I think they did the trail in a shorter time than I did when I first started there. So it's pretty awesome to see. Promote good sportsmanship. This to me is huge, and one of the biggest things that I like to stress with my own kids and also hopefully with the team kids as well is teach them to congratulate each other and also kids they race against. It's fun to lay it all out there on race day, but then be friends after and enjoy riding with each other after and hanging out. Get your team involved beyond MiSCA. Like I said before, we're getting involved with the Milford Bike Festival now this summer on June 2nd at the Main Street Bar and Grill in downtown Milford. And our club is going to be hosting 3 kid-friendly rides. So we're going to do a beginner ride, an intermediate ride, and an advanced ride. And I think it ranges from, I believe it's 10 miles up to 30 miles. It'll be at 10 o'clock in the morning on June 2nd. And I believe at 15 and under will be free with a paid adult. And if the parent doesn't ride, you can sign up under one of our groups and we can be your parent for the day. So the kid will get in free, 15 and under. And I think they're also working in a free lunch for the kids as well. And like I said before, we're also doing local trail maintenance. So this year we're going to try to start doing, 2 to 3 times during the summer to give back to our local trail and help our coordinator out since we're always out on the trail. Also promote your sponsors. I think the more we promote them by going to their restaurants and giving them shout outs and recommending them, the more they're going to be willing to sponsor us again and be excited about us as a team as well. Host a skills clinic. Our title sponsor, Adams Sports Medicine and Physical Therapy in Novi, Dr. Brian Adams, last summer put on a skills and a nutrition clinic for us. And we had, I think, around 30 kids show up, and it was even a rainy day, and we still had that big of a turnout. This year he's planning on doing, I believe, 2 clinics as well for us. Also, support your local bike shop. If you can get involved with a bike shop and get support from them, we have ours showing up to each race for us and giving, helping our kids out with last-minute bike repairs or fixes, and also just promoting shopping local. Consider hosting girls-only rides. This is one thing I'm really excited about this year. Because of the MiSCA changes with level 1 and level 2 coaches, we now have more female coaches. So I'm really excited that we're going to get to take out these girls and also just to try to get more girls on bikes. And lastly, and I would definitely say most importantly, is listen to your instincts. If Darren, Dan, and I didn't follow through, I don't think we'd have a club and a team right now. We had over 70 kids participate and try out mountain biking last summer, and we ended up having 41 kids race. This year, I just checked yesterday, and we're almost at 100 kids signing up to join our club in a few weeks. So our success wasn't from Dan, Darren, or myself. It was because we listened and we put our thoughts into action. So get support from 1 or 2 other families and start it up. You have the power and the ability to get more kids and families on bikes. This is a lifelong sport, as Sean said, and it can change kids' lives and families' lives for the better. And thanks, Sean, and I guess that's all I have. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Emily. I have a couple of questions for you that came in that I'll read out. But I just wanted to touch on, too, that while I think that the story of Huron Valley is amazing, and I was always surprised every time I would hear an update about how they're doing or how many kids are showing up or what's happening, I don't think it is extreme. It's an extreme scenario to say, okay, once a week we're going to meet at this place every week. Let's pick a trail. Just meet there every Thursday night. A lot of clubs are already doing that, right? So it's not an extreme idea to just do that and start promoting it to be in a kids event, and just being consistent with it. And that's really where you're going to see it blossom. And so I'm really excited that everything worked out, because that's kind of what we've been pushing for a while. It's kind of like the rule, right? It's just to be consistent, show up, and if you build it, they will come. So I'm really glad that it's working out. So one of the questions that came in was, what role does the school district play in your team, and do you pay fees to the Huron Valley Rec Department?
So the Huron Valley Rec Department, we do not pay fees to them right now. If we become a school sport under the athletic department, we will, at some point have to pay fees. At that point, I think we figure we'll have just the high schoolers pay, because they'll be more pay to play and then hopefully earn a letter. I think that's another year or 2 down the road. Did I answer all of it?
Yeah, and in my experience too is that when you're actually like a letter sport in school, the team actually has a budget as well. So my thought would be that maybe they wouldn't be paying for race fees in addition to their pay to play. It might kind of be a wash. I don't know that for sure, but in my experience, like I know like Detroit Country Day, for example, they're an actual school sport. And everyone who's involved in any sports at the school pays a certain amount, which is pay to play, and they don't pay any more fees throughout the year. So they have a set budget to work with throughout the entire year, and that covers all the fees for their kids. There's no other, if I want to go to 1 or 5 races, it's the same thing. It's just one thing.
Can I add to that?
Yes, please.
So Huron Valley Rec, I think I missed this part of the question. Huron Valley Rec, for us, they take care of all of our financial. So, if we get money in from our sponsors, they're kind of the ones responsible for it, not us as coaches also. So we don't pay any fees to them. They're kind of just like our managers, managing the finances, helping with communication, getting the word out, that kind of stuff. And also they cover our insurance for our club rides. However, this year it's kind of changing. But
yep, and that's one thing that's a resource that not everyone has access to, and that's kind of like, again, one reason that you could grow and do what you did this year or last year was because you did have that protection and were willing to put yourself out there because you knew that you had that kind of organization behind you, whereas a lot of people might not have that if they don't have the support of their district or an organization that's willing to kind of front their name or their money for it. So I got another question to Emily. Would you say most of your riders are beginners and younger, like elementary and middle school? If so, will you have enough coaches this year to have some of them go out with elementary and others to focus on high school kids, like the more experienced riders? And then, yeah.
Yes. So last year, we had such a huge growth and I would say not enough. It kind of happened so quickly that we didn't have a lot of coaches in place. This year, however, with the new MiSCA, we actually, we are doing one coach per 6 kids. So we have, I think it's 13 or 14 coaches lined up right now. I would say that the majority of our students have been elementary to middle school. This coming year, I think we're going to have a huge middle school class. We do have a lot of elementary as well, but then, now our high school is also growing because some of our middle school kids are moving up to high school. So yes, we definitely will have more coaches this year, and we're lined up, and we just had a coaches meeting last week actually trying to organize and figure out best ways to encourage and help all the students to grow and advance.
Okay, there's another person that asked a very similar question. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reword it a little bit after I read it, okay? How do you keep up with the exponential growth of the team in terms of coaches, having enough for the kids? So it's a very similar question. But what I wanted to word it to you is you emailed me kind of right after we rolled out the new coaching programming, and you said, hey, I got 13 parents that want to do this. Do you have enough slots for me to have them all trained to be coaches? And I'm like, oh my God, I have like 15 holes and you have 13. So I wanted to ask you, how did you get 13 parents to say, oh yeah, I'd want to do that? Or, how did you ask them, are they already riding mountain bikes, or did they just get exposed to it last year? Could you just go into that a little bit?
Yeah, so last year obviously was our first year. Towards the end of the year, we kind of just knew, I guess, who was riding. Parents were showing up riding, some weren't. So we knew who was showing up most weeks, who seemed to be okay with sweeping a group and who would be okay with leading a group a little bit. So I guess once MiSCA came out with a new structure for this year, I just sent an email out to the parents that I thought maybe would be interested, and within a week, I had 12 or 13 people say, yes, I'm in. So we were able to then kind of figure out who wanted to be a level 1, who was comfortable leading, being a level 2 coach. And, we held a meeting last week, so we're all in place for this year. So I think just knowing what parents ride, but then, people can be a coach and not ride as well. We have 2 coaches this year signed up that, maybe aren't as comfortable riding, but are willing to do all the other work that goes on behind the scenes. So I think, if you just make that step, parents really want to be, if they're into biking already, then they're excited about this.
Awesome. And then it looks like we have one more, and that is, how did you promote, or where did you promote your team rides?
So last year, we did our team rides on an app called the Team app. However, this year we're going to use the Sports Illustrated Play app and not, we're going to go away with the Team app. I don't believe we really posted our team rides on our club page, as we know that there's a lot of other people that are on our page as well. So we didn't want to, promote like, hey, we're going here, when, there might be people that aren't even a part of our club on our Facebook page. So we pretty much used email and an app to promote our team rides and practices. I hope I answered that right.
Yeah, and then you mentioned also Huron Valley had a little bit of advertising that they did for you. Could you talk to that just a little bit?
Yeah, so we came up with a flyer at the very beginning. When we first started it, we said, hey, we're having an informational meeting first. And we made a flyer for that. And we had Huron Valley put it on their Facebook page, and we tried to, Twitter it and Instagram it, tried to use all forms of social media to get the word out. And then we also made a club flyer where the schools distributed it, they didn't distribute it to the middle schools and high schools, but we at least got an email out to those schools, and then they printed the flyers out to the elementary and sent them home. We also, this year, a way to draw, we're trying to draw our high schools, get more high school kids involved. So we went to like an orientation day at our high schools and said, hey, we had a table there set up for information about joining our team this year.
That's awesome. Okay, very good. I think that was it for your questions. If anybody has any more questions for Emily, go ahead and send them over. We still have a few more minutes left on the webinar that I'm going to be talking in more general terms. But there's a couple more questions that are not for Emily that just came in. One of them is the difference between a team and a club. So this kind of goes into the Michigan High School Athletic Association definition of a team. And a lot of school districts will only allow like a lettered sport, or what they would call a team, to be formed from an MHSAA sanctioned sport. And I would say that mountain biking is probably pretty far from being MHSAA. So most school districts and most schools are not going to be that open to it being an official school sport. And that's where the word team might come from. And that's kind of, I think Huron Valley, they were looking at a team as in the team that was going to be racing, whereas their club rides were just kids that wanted to ride who would show up without any experience, not necessarily that interested in the competitive aspect of it, but just wanting to learn mountain biking and be part of the club. So that's kind of the difference. Most schools are going to start their teams as a club team or a club sport. And when you're a club team or sport, you don't usually have a JV and a varsity level. It's not like a lettering sport in the school. But like, I'm trying to think of other sports, like skiing is often a club sport versus an MHSAA sport. And there's other clubs in a school that aren't necessarily athletic in nature. Sometimes there's like a club soccer team and then also like a JV and varsity soccer team, and those are different. So often mountain biking will come in as a club sport into the school versus it being like an MHSAA JV varsity level. Another question that we got was some clarification on whether or not kids or their parents have to pay to be involved with the team. So I made the statement that in order for a child to participate on your team, they have to sign the waiver. They don't necessarily have to be registered with MiSCA, and that is definitely true. When I say participate, I mean it's kind of like a trying it out. So if they want to come to maybe one or maybe 3 practices, I would say, they're not really a part of the team yet. They're just kind of feeling it out. Maybe they just got, they're still on their older bike and they're kind of feeling out if they want to really invest in a new bike and that kind of stuff. That's fine. As long as you have them sign the waiver and you mail that waiver to MiSCA, they will be covered under MiSCA's insurance as part of your team. If once they become actually like part of your team and they're coming to every practice and they have a jersey and they're going to do the races, that kind of stuff, once they're ingrained in your team and they are part of your club and they are showing up, that's when you have to make sure that they are on your roster in SI Play, so you can communicate with them so that they're part of the team and part of the organization. And again, that just covers all the costs that are going to go into having them participate on your team. I don't know what the actual dollar amount is per rider that joins the club, but I do know how much insurance costs, and it's very expensive. Let's see. And then I got one more question for Emily, actually, that I will touch on now instead of waiting until the end. And so sorry, you have to go off mute again. Did you have any coaches that joined the team last year that were brand new to mountain biking? And how did you get the coach up to speed? There's one way to get riders up to speed, but how did you help out your coaches?
I don't know if we really did have any last year. Last year it was more, we had, some volunteer parents, I would say, that swept groups. And we just made sure they were background checked through the school district. This year, we do have, I would say, one or two coaches that are pretty new to mountain biking. But again, they're being a level 1 coach. So they're sweeping, and then we'll kind of get them up to speed that way.
Yeah, I would think a lot of the times they're going to be involved in all the team meetings and stuff like that, and the pre-ride meetings, and they're going to be just like a new mountain biker. They'll be kind of coming up to the same speed as, even maybe a third grader who's just learning how to ride on the trails. So I would think maybe putting them with the younger groups who are also learning the same skills. And I don't think that's a bad thing. And it might not even be younger. It might be high school kids that are just now starting to mountain bike too. I was after high school that I started mountain biking, and so I would have needed all of those basic skills as well. And that is what it is. And that's kind of why we break out into skill level when it comes to those rides usually. Okay, I'll go ahead and move on now from the questions, and you're going to come back to me. And so what's required to start a team? So if you're going to be the main person organizing the team, you probably do need some cycling experience. You're likely going to end up becoming a level 2 coach if you're the one who's organizing the team, because you might not be able to find 2 or 3 other adults who are interested right away, and you want to get moving. You should have a desire to learn more about the sport, how to teach mountain biking skills, how to lead a ride. You don't need to know those things yet. We will train you those skills coming up in April. You should have some spare time. Not easy to come by, I know, but if you're already riding a few times a week, you can dedicate maybe one of those rides to MiSCA and to helping grow the youth side of the sport. Being consistent is a huge thing. So that spare time should come on a consistent night of the week or a consistent day of the week, so that way your kids and your parents aren't confused and moving all around and trying to organize one ride that fits everyone's schedule every week. You're never going to find that. So it's best just to pick a day that works best for you, that you can guarantee you'll be there every week, and whoever shows up, shows up. And as your team or club grows, that's when you can start adding more days, and as the race season gets closer, doing more things on the weekend and pre-riding and all that good stuff. Obviously, probably if you're interested in starting a team, you should enjoy working with kids or have a passion for youth development. Whether or not you've ever coached a team before, it doesn't matter. But in general, I get teary-eyed when I see those kids cross the finish line, the real young ones. I think that's how I know I'm passionate about it. I don't know how better to describe that. But I think it's really cool, and the passion that they put into it, and as Emily mentioned, the effort that they can put into this is more than you would have thought or that you would know if you didn't push them to do it. I think it's really cool. If you are trying to form a school team, then you do need permission from the school. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to be a team. It doesn't mean that you have to be coming from the athletic director, but typically you will need to have somebody at the school that sponsors your club to be an official school team. And when I use the word team, it's a MiSCA thing, and any affiliated set of kids is considered a team as far as MiSCA goes. When it comes to the school, there may be various definitions, as we mentioned earlier, whether it's a club or a team or JV or varsity. That doesn't really play into MiSCA until you start using those same words in our contexts, but those are not transferable. A club rider who goes to a school and they are in a club sport can still be a varsity rider in MiSCA. It might not earn them a letter from their school, but let it be known that they're the fastest kids in the state, and that's great. You have to register with MiSCA if you're going to be an official MiSCA team. There's a link on here. In the GoToWebinar, there's a resources document. You can download this PowerPoint. It's in a PDF format, but all those links should work, so you can get to all those resources that you've seen in the PowerPoint. And again, if you're going to be starting the team, you're likely going to be going through the coach training, and you're probably going to be recruiting. I put and or, because you're either going to have to go through the training yourself, or you're going to need to recruit some parents really quickly to go through it. You should have at least 2 or 3 adult volunteers per team, and that's basically, in order to run any ride, you're going to need that many adults at a ride, at least 2, hopefully 3, and more as we start talking about our 1-to-6 coach to rider ratio. So equipment you'll need. As a coach, you won't need a whole lot of equipment, but having rules and policies in place regarding equipment is essential to avoid problems. So it's more along the lines of what does the child need, or what does the parent who's being a coach, what do they need to bring with them? So each student should get their equipment checked before they ride, and the minimum equipment necessary would be obviously a bike. Hopefully that bike fits them well and is well maintained and is safe to go on the trail. And those are things that you can point those things out, send them to the right people that can help them, or maybe you have a bike mechanic that's a volunteer on your team that can help them out. That's always great to have. You want to talk about helmets, shoes, and clothing as well. They might not come to their first practice with the best helmet. They're probably not going to be clipped in their first ride. They're probably not going to be in mountain biking gear. But you might want to mention to them, you might not want loose-fitting clothing. You might not want open-toed shoes. Those kinds of things you want to watch out for and check for so that kids aren't getting injured. It's not listed here. It might be on another slide, so I'm just going to mention it now. But water is an important thing. I would consider that to be equipment, very minimal level of equipment that they should have. If a kid doesn't have a bike, you can borrow a bike from another family or someone who rides. You can visit local bike swaps, or we do have local organizations and teams and bike shops who are willing to either donate a bike or to do a loaner bike program. So if you do have any kids on your team that could really benefit from having a bike, maybe they're really fast, but they're on a Huffy, and they could do really well if they had a loaner. That's somebody that you might want to put forward for that loaner program by filling out the scholarship application. And they don't have to be fast in order to get that. I just mentioned that as an example. It could be anybody who's just in need of a bike and is passionate about really, learning their mountain biking skills. So when you're facilitating team rides, safety is number one. The leader of the team rides has to set the tone for safety at the beginning. What's going to happen is you're going to do a couple of these rides, and you're going to think kind of everybody gets it now. They've come to a couple of rides. They don't need to talk about what to do if somebody falls, or where we're going to meet up on the trail because we've come to this trail every week. Never think that the kid already knows what they're to do, because maybe they weren't listening the first time. They listened the second time. They didn't listen the third time. So you want to make sure you're repeating it and being consistent every time. So consistency doesn't just come on the day of the week that you are holding the ride. It comes from how you hold the ride, the rules that you put in place, communicating with the teams, all that stuff has to be consistent as well. You want to lead by example. You need to follow the rules of the trail just like you're expecting those kids to do, and you want to set them up to be good trail stewards as well. Just like how the Huron Valley team is working on trail days at the Milford Trail, you want to make sure these kids are, following those rules, leaving no trace, not taking any risks that you don't need to take, that kind of thing. So in order to have a team ride, you have to have a level 2 certified coach on your team. And from then on, you need to have a 1-to-6 ratio of coaches to riders. Now, that is the baseline rule for MiSCA, and that's the guideline to follow is a 1-to-6 ratio. So again, you should have 1 coach to 6 riders, and you have to have at least 1 level 2 coach at any team ride where kids are on bikes or adults are on bikes, in the trail. Some other equipment that you'll need to facilitate a team ride, a first aid kit, As a level 2 certified coach, you will have gone through first aid training, but that doesn't mean that they hand you a first aid kit when that training is done. So you're probably going to want to pick one of those up. There's pretty inexpensive ones at CVS or wherever. You're going to want to have a cell phone on you at all times. You can either program emergency contacts into your cell phone before you do the group ride, or print them all out, maybe download a spreadsheet of your roster and print off the list of the emergency contacts for each kid. So if someone does get hurt and their parent isn't there, that you know who to call, and you can get them help as soon as possible. Again, you have to have waivers signed online or in person for each of the riders that's going to be on the trail. The online process is way, way, way easier. The waiver this year is 5 pages, I think, and it has emergency contact information and a bunch of other stuff, allergies and a lot of things in it. So it's much better to fill it out online for the parent and for you. If you do have a paper waiver signed, you need to mail that into MiSCA, as I mentioned earlier. Having a multi-tool, pump, spare tubes, etc. on a group ride is also beneficial. You might not have a whole lot of time to fix a broken chain, so that might be kind of an end-of-ride scenario, especially when you're with 30 kids. But if you do have something that you can make a quick fix to help the kid out, then that's a good thing. So kind of the top 11 bullet points here for leading your ride. Think safety, teach safety, and act safely on the ride. You make sure you plan your routes. You want to establish bailouts and shortcuts home. So in case it starts raining or something gets dangerous on the trail, it gets too dark in the late fall, make sure you have a place where everyone can group up to get out. Note other shortcuts back as well for emergencies. It's good to have some kind of course map for the group ride and have one of those with at least one of your coaches. Appointing a second ride leader could also be very important. Someone else on the team who's a level 2 coach who can take over leading the ride if you were to get hurt as the ride leader, or if you need to escort a rider out of the trail. Ensure adequate hydration, food, clothing, equipment at the start of the race. You don't want to get halfway through the race, or I'm sorry, not the race, the ride. You don't want to get halfway through the ride and then realize that somebody doesn't have any water, and now they're taking a sip from 3 different people's water bottles. I'm assuming that we've all done that, but when you're in a team setting and we need to make sure that things are happening safely, check that at the beginning of the ride, and hopefully you can alleviate that. Keep the groups together as much as possible. As mentioned earlier, you might have different levels of difficulty or skill, different levels of skilled riders on your team. So you might have the high school riders running out first, doing a couple extra loops, or different sections that the younger riders aren't doing. But ending the ride at the same time is a good thing to try to do, even though the other riders might do more mileage. Establish familiar regroup destinations. This goes back into the bailouts and the shortcuts a little bit, in that we all know the trails where there's a common bench or a mile marker or something that would be a good place to stop, a road crossing, something. Establish those where we're going to stop up front. And I always like to say, too, to stop more often than you think you need to, because there's probably somebody who would appreciate that in the back of the pack, or even in the middle of the pack, that's just not showing the exhaustion. And that goes into monitoring each rider's condition during the ride. Again, making sure they have water if they need a bite of a Cliff Bar, or if they're reaching exhaustion, making sure that you're aware of that up front so that you can watch that rider, maybe ride with them a little bit more closely, or escort them out if you need to. Now, if an adult cannot escort a rider out and they need to leave the group early, then what you want to do is make sure you circle the entire group back. Now, hopefully you're going to have more than one level 2 on a group ride, but you might not. And if not, then if the ride needs to end, then it needs to end, and that's safety first, obviously. Okay, so mountain biking is more than just fitness. It's being able to ride over rough terrain efficiently, safely descending steep and rough trails, and getting over obstacles such as fallen trees. So this is what we call like kind of teaching the skills more than just kind of riding fast, right? So also teaching correct braking, gear usage, balancing, turning, straight lines, and getting over obstacles is things that will be covered in our coach training, but also things that you're going to cover with these riders as they start to advance in their skill. The level 2 coach certification is required before you conduct your own coaching clinic. So before you start teaching skills to riders who are not your own child, you should have gone through either the MiSCA training or another certification program to get you up to speed. So a common question that I hear is like, well, I'm not really a coach, or I'm not, I don't have the most fitness, or I might not be the right one who's like, going to really make the fastest kid, right? And the question is, are you the coach? If you're bringing together and guiding a team, guess what? You're the coach. You put the hat on. It doesn't mean that you need to be the varsity coach. It doesn't mean you need to be the fastest rider. It means you need to have some organizational skills, and you need to be consistent, and that you can kind of maintain order in this environment. So it's listed here: enforce regular attendance on the rides. That's one thing Emily didn't really do because she recognized the competition with other sports. That doesn't mean you just say, if you miss 3 rides, you're off the team. But what it means is that you expect the riders to be there, that you're doing this for them and you're going to be there. You hope that they're going to be there too. Hold meetings outside of practice to go over different rule changes or what your expectations, fundraising, that kind of thing. And also communication, so email, social media, the SI Play app. Again, Emily mentioned this stuff, so I'm not going to go into 100% detail here. There is a Coaching for Dummies book that's pretty good. It's not mountain biking related, but it's just in general, how to organize kids, dealing with stress, dealing with intense parents, that kind of thing. So there's a bunch of things that parents wouldn't mind doing on your team. Again, as Emily mentioned, I'm not going to list all these out. Take a screenshot, or you can pause the recording if you're watching a recording. But there's a lot of things that you can have your parents do that can help you out as the team organizer. And if you had a different parent doing all of these different things, you might wonder what you would be doing as the organizer of the team, and that could totally be true. What's often going to happen is you're going to have somebody doing 2 or 3 of these bullet points, and maybe you don't even touch 4 or 5 of them because you just don't have the time or the energy to dedicate to that. Some of these things are going to happen organically as one parent says, hey, where do you live? And they live near each other. Guess what? You just got a carpool coordinator. You can ask them how they did that and have them kind of replicate that for the rest of the team. Find a parent or somebody in your school district that does graphic design. I'm sure there's somebody. Maybe the school district has a graphic design class, and then they would be able to donate that time to you to help you design uniforms and T-shirts and flyers and that kind of stuff. So the first step really to anything to getting involved with MiSCA is to go to miscabike.org/register. There you will create your SI Play account at Sports Illustrated Play. They're going to ask you a bunch of questions, but basically they're called family accounts, where you'll have one account for you, your spouse, your kids, and then anytime you need to register anybody for any clinic or coaching or riding or racing, it's all within that one account. As well as all the communication on your team would come to that one account. Currently, registration is open for the entire year, which means that we have our annual registration open, team registration, race registration, and all waivers are completed online. As I mentioned, paper waivers are available for people who show up on the same day as a practice or the same day as a race. I put avoid there because you do not want to do it on the same day, but they are available if you need it. You can go to that website to download the waivers. They'll also be available at the race. We'll have them for people to fill out. One note is that we mentioned that the $50 annual fee is not necessarily required for the first practice. It is required for a race. So any kid that comes to a race, regardless of how many races they do, will have to be a member of MiSCA in order to race for any race of the year. And then these are some upcoming events that we have. First up is obviously the coach training in April, first in Novi, then in Rockford. If you have not registered for those yet, please do so as soon as possible. The spots are kind of filling up pretty fast. I think we got about 5 more open at Novi, and that's, it could be ones that already given out to coaches. So that's like legitimately how many seats we have left at all. Rockford, we have quite a few more seats open, so that one's fine. But please register as soon as possible so we know how many to expect. We have a couple girls-only clinics coming up. First, on April 22nd, we're doing a trail day at Hickory Glen, helping them build out a new section of trail. We also have a fit clinic and no drop ride on May 5th at Island Lake. That's at the bike demo. We're probably going to have a webinar next month. I don't have a topic yet for that, but we're probably going to have one the last Monday of the month. That's kind of what we're shooting for. And then as Emily mentioned, we're doing the guided group ride at the Milford Bike Festival. Anybody under the age of 15 will get into the event for free. Emily mentioned they are providing lunch. That'll be kind of like a hot dog, drink, chips kind of deal for any of the youth riders. So I want to cover real quick, just thank our sponsors for supporting us last year and then again this year too. We really couldn't do it without you guys, and we were only able to grow into this league aspect of Michigan Scholastic Cycling because of our sponsors. The expenses for insurance and running the organization are pretty daunting, and there's no way that we would have been able to do it without charging probably twice as much as what we do today for races and league fees. And if you do Google other leagues that are out there in other states, their race fees are $40 to $50 per race, and they have an annual fee, and there's other things too. So I do know that we are kind of getting a little bit more expensive this year with that $50 annual fee, but I do want to reassure everyone that when it comes to the industry, we are still very, very efficient in our costs. So I want to thank everyone for attending. We do have quite a few more questions that came in while I was talking, and I couldn't read them while I'm talking. So I'm going to turn around and read those. But if you do have any more questions, please type them into the questions box of GoToWebinar, and I'll try to touch on those as we're talking. If you have any direct questions you just want me to answer offline, feel free to email me. My email is on the screen right now. If you're interested in volunteering, email Jody at jgiles@miscabike.org. If you just have some general question or information, email the board, and we'll get back to you as well. Okay, so there's quite a few questions. I'm going to try to get through them here. Okay, the first question is, will there be another webinar? I think I covered that in the last slide. I do believe there will be another webinar at the end of April. I just have to, again, come up with some content for what people would enjoy. If you have some suggestions, feel free to type those into the GoToWebinar box right now. My first idea is insurance, because that's something that we finalized as of March 15th. We are fully covered with our insurance, and that's something that I could educate the general public on, but it might not fill up a whole hour, and it might not be very interesting. So if you have some more things that could fill that time, that would be good. Okay. Another question came in about what your recommendation is for learning how to teach mountain biking skills or learning mountain biking skills yourself as an adult volunteer. There are a lot of different clinics available that are not necessarily MiSCA. So NICA is the National Interscholastic Cycling Association. They do clinics in surrounding states, so that would be a little bit of a drive to have to go to one of their clinics, but that's usually a day-long event. And having a certification or a license from them would also would satisfy your requirement if you wanted to be a level 2 coach for MiSCA. So you wouldn't have to worry about then taking ours next year or something like that to satisfy the requirement. Additionally, there's the I think it's Professional Mountain Biking Institute. I'm not sure if the P is professional, but PMBI is an organization that does coaching clinics. They have one coming up in May in the UP, or like in the, right at the tip of the Mint there. I think it's like Sault Ste. Marie. And then the International Mountain Biking Association has just spun off into a new organization that's doing the ICP is what it was called. I think they changed names, but that is also happening too. So I think there are clinics happening with that in the state, like within the next couple of months as well. And that clinic would also satisfy any requirement that you would have with MiSCA. It's going to go above and beyond what you're going to learn in 8 hours at one of our trainings. Additionally, we're probably going to do more skill clinics in the summer. So if you can't make the ones in April, hopefully you can make the ones in the summer. Okay. I have another question about background checks. So you actually complete the background check when you register for MiSCA as a coach. So when you create your SIPlay account at miscabike.org/register, you're going to then register yourself as a coach. And that's under the annual coach and rider registration. When you go through that as a coach, it's going to send you through all the background check information after you pay. And you will have to go through a concussion training as well, and that's all built into that application. Okay, a rule came out about kickstands, or a question about a kickstand rule. So the question is, do we have a rule on kickstands? Yes, we do. We do not allow kickstands on a bike during a race. As far as on your practice rides, I would highly, strongly recommend not having it. I don't know that our rules touch on the equipment requirements for a practice. I don't think they do. But things like having end caps on your handlebars, not having the drop bars, those kinds of things, those are rules that we have at our races, and they're there for a reason. So if you were to use that rule, our race rules, and apply that to your practices, that would totally be the safest approach. Okay, another, Sean Tyrell mentioned that, if anybody is interested in starting a team and just wants to kind of see how it works, how it goes, feel free to attend one of Brighton area schools. They have a team. Feel free to attend one of their rides, and they'll kind of show you the ropes and show you how it goes. And they're an awesome team as well. They did one of these presentations a couple years ago for us, and they've been state champions ever since. So they've been just doing gangbusters. Okay. Okay, so another question about the background check. So if you went through all of the registration and it asked you the questions about background checks and you have not heard back anything, then that means that you passed your background check. Otherwise, I would have emailed you. So if you haven't heard anything back from me or from the application, then you're good to go. And you should show as such on your roster. If you're on a team, it would show in your roster for your team manager. All right, that is all the questions that I have. I'm definitely willing to stick around for a few more minutes if there's any other ones that come in, but I'm not seeing any typing. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and end it then. Thank you so much to Emily and everyone else who joined the call. I love getting more questions. It means that we're actually getting some feedback here, and that's great. And I hope you guys appreciated the webinar and got a little bit of information out of it. This year is going to be awesome. I can't wait. And I'm really looking forward to seeing everybody at practices and at the kickoff meeting in June, and at all the events until then. So until next month, We'll talk to you guys later. Good luck. Email me if you have any questions. Thank you.